Oh, hello there.
Hello. What's your question?
Alex, I've got a slightly long question, so bear with me.
I'll have a short answer, Neil. On you go.
We talked about and we heard about how UK and West in general have supported, knowingly or unknowingly, dictators or governments around the world which have been irresponsible. And then with that background, we look at what China is doing in South China Sea and with all its neighbors and Africa and with its own people, human rights and all sorts of stuff. If that is a situation when other countries like Australia and USA, they are not, extending, more trade with China, so they're trying to take.
Well, Australia certainly is.
Yeah.
Australia is. And obviously in US there is a big sentiment against China, and I'm sure if Trump comes in, then that might change. But my question is that if that's what the world is moving towards China, why is it that the world leaders embrace a form of life?
Neil, we're kind of losing you there, but we've got the gist
of Neil's question. Neil, I think there are circumstances where you should take certain punitive action against countries because of their behaviour. One such circumstance now, incidentally, is Saudi Arabia in South Yemen, where we are selling them still military equipment, despite the clear and obvious evidence that the military equipment that we are selling them is being used against civilian targets. Overwhelming evidence. And I've been looking at parliamentary disgraces, incidentally, the MPs who walked out of the joint select committees in order to destroy the quorum, which was considering that report. And that, to me, is a parliamentary disgrace. That happened this week and has hardly been commented upon, and it should be. So there are circumstances where you have to take action. I would argue that you should have a military embargo on Saudi Arabia until they bring their actions into line with what is standard international conduct. But you cannot conduct all of your international relations and your trade just because you approve or disapprove of the government of a country, because otherwise you'd end up trading with nobody. And Australia, for example, is falling over itself just now to get Chinese students into Australia very successfully, whereas every time I was in China, I kept falling over American oil companies who were trying to do business. So, I know that Donald Trump talks about what he would do and stand up to China and all the rest of it. I think you'd find that money talks in America, and they'd be continuing to trade with China, whatever happened.
So what do you make of what Theresa May is apparently about to announce? Because she was quite clear that she had severe reservations about the development of Hinkley Point, particularly the relationship with the Chinese, and yet it now appears that she's going to give the go-ahead. Was there sort of heavy politics being played out here?
I think probably. And clearly, it looked like the thing was going to be cancelled. As I said in the introduction, I thought that was her best decision as Prime Minister, because I think it was just a disaster waiting to happen. And by that, I don't mean it's going to blow up, probably. It has some doubt as to whether it will be built in anything like the timescale that EDF say, because none of the other models have been built in anything like the timescale. But what you can absolutely guarantee on that 20 billion or so public subsidy, twice as much as other available sources of power at the present moment. That'll extend to 30 or 40 billion. As soon as that thing is well underway, it's uncancelable. And I think it's a dreadful decision, not because I believe that Chinese finance for a nuclear power station is a threat to national security, but because that expensive electricity will make British industry uncompetitive for a long, long time. And one last thing on this. One of the things they're going to sell this on, apparently, is £100 million of the steel to build Hinkley Point out of the billions and billions it's going to cost to build it. It's going to come from steel mills, Welsh steel mills. And that's a good thing that orders come in for Welsh steel mills. The problem, of course, is that the steel industry in this country is suffering from lack of competitiveness on energy costs. And if you inbuild into the British electricity system something that inherently uncompetitive is this massive subsidised nuclear power station, then you condemn industry forever and a day to that situation.
One of the advantages of Brexit is that the British government can decide exactly where we procure our steel from. At the moment, we wouldn't be able to do that.
But then I thought, of course, that Conservative governments didn't believe in these massive public subsidies. Unless, of course, it's nuclear power.
Pragmatic Conservative governments have always thought that, including the Thatcher government, as you well know. Neil, thank you very much for that. Let's move on to Harry in Portsmouth. Harry, what's your question for Alex?
Oh, yes. Hello, Alex.
Hello, Harry.
As you know, they they reopened the 30 miles of the border railway south of Edinburgh, and I think it was done for about 300 or 400 million for a single track. Now, if the Scottish politicians can do that quite efficiently up there, how come when the HS2 conundrum became a case of capacity rather than speed, no one seems to want to reopen the Great Central Line, 30 miles of track north of Aylesbury to Rugby?
Yeah, I think...
And there's also a preserved line already reopened through to Leicester and Nottingham anyway. What is it about? A decision can be made quickly and concisely up in Edinburgh, yet even when the Scots MPs are down in London, everything what could be an instant railway doesn't happen, and everybody prefers to pile into a multi-billion project.
All right,
I think you're spot on, Harry. I took the decision to build the Borders Railway, so you might argue it wasn't too quick, since the Beecham cancelled the Borders Railway back in the 1960s, so it took the Scottish Government a while to get round to it. But fair enough, I got round to it quick enough. It's double the passenger numbers that were forecast. It's been open a year now, double the passenger numbers that have been forecast, and was built, as you rightly say, quickly and efficiently, and it's widely welcomed in the Borders. Transformative, incidentally, for the Borders economy. Now, where Harry is dead right, I think railway, if you look at what's really successful in railway, it's not the big, grand, massive projects, HS2, which is going to take 40, 50, 60 years to come to full fruition, going through countless public inquiries, objections and all the rest of it. It's these spur lines giving connectivity to places...
Given that, do you think it should be binned, HS2, as it stands at the moment?
Yes, I do, actually. Because the real justification for HS2 is to give, as Harry rightly says, more capacity. More capacity could be done easily. And the only other justification is over a very long distance, it gives you a real saving in time. But they're not going that very long distance. I doubt, actually, if they'll ever get to Scotland. And by the time they get to Newcastle, I think we'll all be dead.
But I mean, in terms of the cost, obviously it's cost a lot so far. I think I'm right in saying it's over £1 billion in sort of preparatory costs. So if it was cancelled now, you've lost £1 billion for nothing.
Well, I suppose the same argument was used about Hinkley Point, because I understand that the bill thus far for Hinkley Point is over £2 billion. I think, you can always make that argument. I think if something is not a justifiable idea, then it's not a justifiable idea. And HS2 depended on the full cross-border connection for it to be a justified idea. Incidentally, just look at the savings I'm making. The Westminster Refurbishment, that will save about £10 billion. The Hinkley Point pit of expenditure nuclear, that will save about 20 or 30 billion. And the HS2, and we'll build Harry's lines instead.
Okay.
About 100 of them.
Let's
for HS2.
move on. Al is in Perth.